Welcome, everybody, to No BS BJJ. I am Brian Wiggins, your host for this adventure of audio and visual proportions. And today we are going to be talking about how to recover from injuries. More specifically, are there things that we can do that will allow us to recover more quickly from those injuries? Because if you're like me and you start doing jiu-jitsu, you get addicted to it very, very quickly, and anything that keeps you from getting onto the mats just seems like the worst thing in the world. And injuries suck and are inevitable when it comes to doing jiu-jitsu or any combat sports, really. And we want to minimize our time away, whether that's because it's a social connection, because we just don't want everyone catching us and beating us, or whatever your motivation is. I had to face this very specifically this year. I tore my bicep tendon off the bone. No, I did not do it doing jiu-jitsu. I wish that I had. If it had to happen, I wish I had a cool story. I was defending an armbar and, we had this karate school come in and dojo storm us. And they said, "Let us fight your best guy." And I went in and I fought all of them. But did that tear my bicep tendon? No, it didn't. It was afterwards, after I had laid waste to the entire karate dojo. I was high-fiving everyone from my school, and that's when I tore my bicep tendon. No, that's not what happened. I was bowling, and it tore off the bone during the sixth frame. Probably from years and years of abuse between rock climbing for a long time, jiu-jitsu, all of that. Anyways, I found myself out of commission for what seemed like it would be up to 6 months, and I was searching for ways to shorten that safely in a way that I would not re-injure myself, but be able to return to full activity. So that's what got me researching this, and that is what we're talking about today. So when I'm talking about recovering from an injury, I am talking about more than just the normal dents and dings we get along the way, things that might mean we need to take a day or two off, maybe a week, just to kind of let things settle down, or the normal little bruises and bumps and tweaks that we can actually train through, either by modifying our training or just, we're going to live with it in a non-toxic way. I'm talking about the kinds of injuries that require us to take several weeks or months off, either like a broken bone, a severe sprain, or possibly even something that requires surgery, like a distal bicep tendon repair. Now, if we get injured like this, it does not mean our training is screwed. Okay? It does not necessarily mean that we are completely out of it for that period of time and cannot engage, and that there is nothing we can do. We just have to let the body heal. There are steps that we can take that could possibly help speed our recovery. Now, I'm saying could possibly and not definitely. Why? Everybody heals at different rates. Every injury is different. And there's no real way to say that by doing A, you're going to reduce your recovery time by X amount of time. Why? Because we don't know how long that time would have been without that. There is no way to do a random controlled experiment doing that. But we do know from large amounts of data what the average healing time is for specific injuries for people, and that when groups of people engage in specific activities, that it seems like there might be a reduction in that injury recovery time. So what we're going to be looking at are steps to help speed our recovery, maintain strength, and how to maintain our mental game as well, because that's a major part of it. So, how do we speed this recovery along? Before we go any further, you should do any of this. If you're going to do any of this, you absolutely need to do it in consultation with a doctor. Preferably a licensed doctor, one who still, is allowed to practice medicine. And more specifically, I would say you need to see a sports medicine specialist. Why? One, I am not a doctor, so you should not be taking my advice over your doctor's advice. If you're getting information that allows you to ask questions, that's perfectly fine. But again, if it's between me and a doctor, I would say trust the doctor. But I would also say see a sports medicine specialist, because they're going to understand your injury and your desire to get back to athletic activity as quickly as possible. This does not mean that your general practitioner is not good. It does not mean that a normal osteopath is not good. or a normal physical therapist is not good. They will all be perfectly fine giving you advice on how to heal from an injury, but their goal might be different. Their goal might be to get you back to just normal daily routine stuff and not necessarily get you back to doing jiu-jitsu, trying to twist other people's arms off. So talking to a sports medicine specialist, whether it's osteopathic, an osteopathic surgeon, or a sports medicine physical therapist, that's going to probably get you better results for what you want to do. Now, the other thing, too, is that when you do get doctor's orders, I would suggest following them. Don't go off and do your own thing. If the doctor says don't engage in this activity, especially if it's a sports medicine doctor, don't go ahead and engage in that activity just because you feel okay. Not a smart tactic there. Anyway, what are things that we can do to help speed our recovery along? First thing, learn to live with acceptable levels of pain. And I don't mean this in a toxic way. What I mean is that when we're injured, along with that injury comes inflammation. And generally with that inflammation comes pain. And usually our first reaction is to alleviate that pain. And how do we do that? We'll do it by icing, and we will do that through NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, things like ibuprofen. And yes, these will be good for reducing inflammation. However, we know now, studies have been showing that inflammation, that acute inflammation we get when injured or when recovering from surgery, is actually part of the body's healing process. That the inflammation is getting the stuff that injury needs to be repaired to the injury site. So when we reduce that inflammation, we're actually slowing down the healing process, right? Think of like a construction site. A building collapses because of an earthquake, and now we need to clear out and rebuild that building. But by reducing inflammation, we're taking what would be big roads leading there, and now we're going to narrow those roads down so there's fewer trucks that are able to get in and out every day. It's going to slow the process down. Yes, it will eventually, that building will be rebuilt eventually, but it's going to take much longer. So we don't want to reduce that beyond a reasonable level. So we need to learn to live with acceptable levels of pain. Now, this is going to be different for everyone. Everybody has different pain tolerances. And I am absolutely not advocating that you live in such pain that you are unable to have a decent quality of life during your healing process. Absolutely not. That is not what I am saying. What I'm saying is that decide what is going to allow you to live your life, be able to do the things you need to do, and have a decent quality of life. Figure out where that inflection point is. Now, if you need help with managing pain beyond that, this is where maybe you look at acetaminophen, things like Tylenol, or you talk to your doctor about some kind of pain management plan. Talk to your doctor about that. Absolutely should be done in consultation with a doctor. Do not self-medicate. But in general, stay away from the NSAIDs, stay away from icing the injuries, because that's only going to slow and impede the healing process. How else can we speed the process along? Well, one of the things that you're going to have happen when you're unable to use a limb, from a sprained ankle, from a torn tendon, something like that, is that you're going to have some degree of muscle atrophy. You're going to lose muscle mass. You're going to lose strength in that group of muscles in that area. So one thing you could do is strength train. Now, ideally, if you have a solid base from lifting heavy weights, full range of motion, close to failure, and you're doing this 1 to 2 times a week, and you've been doing it for a while. How long is a while? I think it's about maybe at least a year. I don't remember exactly what the studies are showing to say where that point is. I think, again, that's different for everyone. But regardless, if you've been doing that, the good news is you're going to have a quicker recovery time. Once you're able to return to sporting activity, it'll take less time for you to get back to where you were. The body is really good about remembering where it used to be. But it also might make you a little bit more injury resistant. But what happens is, or rather, let me back this up. Continue to strength train once you're allowed to. So in other words, if you've had surgery, there might be a couple of weeks where you're not allowed to really do much because your doctor doesn't even want sweat. Your surgeon doesn't want sweat getting near the healing incision because that could cause an infection, which is a whole other thing. But once you're allowed to start sweating and be in the gym, getting back into the gym, and exercising the stuff that you can. So if you injured your arm, go and exercise your legs. You can absolutely do that. Find other exercises you can do that allow you to still do leg day. So going back to the example, torn bicep tendon. I obviously couldn't do back squats. I wasn't going to be able to load the bar onto my back, but I could do leg presses. And there's plenty of machines that I could use that would allow me to do leg activity. And yes, exercising on machines is just fine. There's nothing wrong with it. If someone's telling you that exercising on machines is not a good use of your time and doesn't provide the same strength gains, they're just wrong. That's not how the body works. Compound lifts are awesome. They're more efficient, but you can still get a good workout on the machines. So anyway, do the exercises you can. And as far as having an arm out of commission, do unilateral exercises. So I hurt it was my right biceps tendon. So I was doing left side exercises, pull downs, curls, single arm, dumbbell, chest presses, things like that. Train the other side. Why? There's actually this cross-education, almost sympathetic response that your body has. Your body likes to have some degree of symmetry. And by exercising your left side for a right-sided injury, it has been shown that it will slow down muscle atrophy on the injured or unused side. So right away, that's going to be helpful in maintaining some lean muscle mass, maintaining some of your strength. So that way, once you are healed and cleared for activity and allowed to start doing weight training or any activity with the injured side, you're going to be much closer to where you were from before the injury than if you hadn't trained anything at all. Now, the other thing here is that engaging in strength training is going to help with your mental health as well. Now, we do know that any exercise really allows for endorphins to be released. That can improve our mood, but it also helps us stay connected to a part of our life that we might feel is missing. When you're engaged in any kind of sport, it's not uncommon to have that become a strong part of your identity. And when you're unable to participate in that sport, it's going to lead to you feeling like a little disassociated from yourself. Not a dissociative state, but you're going to feel depressed and off. So by getting back into the gym, not only are you getting the benefit of the endorphins, and just the general health benefits of strength training, but you're also just going to be able to start feeling more connected with that part of you that you're not able to fully connect with yet, but you will stay a degree connected. So that's a good thing. So mental health as well as physical health, that's going to help you get back into fighting shape, literally and figuratively, much more quickly. Now, does that actually speed the injury recovery itself? I don't know. As far as I know, if there are any studies, they're kind of of a mixed bag. Again, it's tough to say that doing X activity provides a Y reduction in injury recovery time. Does it mean that if I'm training my left-hand side, that my right-hand side is going to heal a little bit faster because of anabolic signaling or whatever? I don't know. Maybe. It's not going to hurt, provided, again, you're doing this within the bounds that have been set by your doctor and by your physical therapist. What else can we do? Nutrition. Nutrition is definitely in our control. There are some studies that have shown that by upping your protein intake, especially within the first 2 weeks of the injury or within from the surgery, we'll say the surgery is the same as the injury date because that's the point in time that we're dealing with. By upping your protein, there are some studies that have lent the idea that this could potentially speed up your healing time. right? If we're recovering a muscle injury, tendon, muscle tear, sprain, whatever, your body needs to repair muscle. What does it need for that? It needs protein. So more protein might give your body more materials to help build up or repair from that injury more quickly. So what do? Aim for about 20% more protein than your usual. Now, usual for most people that are athletes, whether it's a hobbyist athlete or professional athlete, is in the realm of about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So I weigh 165 pounds. I'm usually aiming for 165 to 170 grams of protein per day. You want to get about 20% more of that. So when I first had the surgery, I was upping my protein to about 190 to 200 grams per day on average. Some days I was a little bit less, maybe some days I was a little bit more. I was just trying to be consistent with it, which is more important than anything. But I definitely upped my protein beyond the normal amount. Did that help? I don't know. Listen, I was able to recover from my injury. They said I was going to be out for 6 months. I was cleared for full activity at 4 months. Did what I do helped? I don't know. It didn't hurt. But I also I was watching my nutrition. I was in good shape from beforehand. Maybe I just heal naturally fast. I don't know. Maybe I'm a mutant and I've got a healing factor. I don't know. I also had something called a PRP injection, a platelet-rich plasma injection, which was a little expensive. And that has some evidence to say that it could help, and maybe it did. We'll never know. Maybe I would have healed in 4 months anyway. We'll never know. But get more protein. It's almost never going to be a bad health choice to get more protein anyway. Now, one thing we can be kind of, I don't want to say sure about, but we don't want to be in a calorie deficit during our healing process. Why? First thing is our body needs energy to heal. Do we need more energy to heal? I don't know. I don't know if there's been any kind of studies done in metabolism labs that have shown that when you're healing from an injury, you have a higher daily calorie expenditure. I don't know. But we do need energy to heal. And we want all systems running at optimal. So let's not be in a caloric deficit where we know that when we first go into a deficit before our body metabolically adapts, that it'll start, we don't feel great. We don't feel 100% when we're in a caloric deficit. So let's keep everything running optimally. If we're in a caloric deficit and we are not doing resistance training, we do know that yes, fat will be burned, but also we're going to lose lean muscle mass. Why? Lean muscle mass is metabolically expensive to maintain. And if we're not sending anabolic signals to the body to say we need this muscle, our body starts shedding excess muscle. So if we're in a caloric deficit and not strength training, which we may not be doing because we're injured, the weight we lose is going to be muscle, and that means that our strength is going to go down. And if we're looking to get back to the mats, we want to preserve that strength. So another reason not to be in a caloric deficit. The other thing is we don't want to be mentally fatigued from dieting. Being in a caloric deficit it can be, depending on who you are, it can be mentally taxing to varying degrees. But if we're healing from an injury, and we're not able to participate in jiu-jitsu, and maybe we're not able to go the way we used to go in the gym, and on top of that, we're adding the mental stress of being in a caloric deficit, this is not putting us in a good headspace and a good situation to heal in an ideal way. Right? So, and that actually segues into our next part here. How do we help our mental health during the healing process? Because that, one, again, there have been some studies that have shown that a positive mindset can maybe improve healing outcomes. But we also just don't want to go through every day feeling like warmed over shit, right? There's enough in life that's going to make it gives us anxiety and depression and all the other stuff. We don't need to add to that. So how do we maintain a good degree of mental health through this injury process? Okay, first thing, stay connected to your community. That's really an easy thing right there. Keep going to class. You're injured, you had surgery, whatever. You're not able to get on the mats. You can't drill, you can't roll. Keep going to class though. Why? One, you get to connect with the people that are ostensibly your friends, if not maybe they're just your jiu-jitsu acquaintances. But these are people you spend some considerable time with in close proximity, physically. So go there, connect with them, talk with them. They'll be great. They'll be glad to see you. Even if it means plain clothes. Like when I first was recovering from the surgery, like even I wasn't able to get my arm into the gi because of the bandage, the wrap that was on my arm. So the first couple weeks, I was just there in plain clothes, t-shirt and jeans, and I would take photos and video, and I was talking with people. But just go there, just get engaged. You're just talking with people. It's going to help you stay connected with that. And then once you're able to, just get dressed. Get the gi on or get your no-gi gear on, whatever it is, and just be there. You don't have to drill. You don't have to participate, but you're there. And it's going to help you feel more connected with your community, which is definitely going to help your mental health. Will it be frustrating not be able to participate? Absolutely. But you'll be there, which is important. And honestly, even watching class is going to help maintain your education with jiu-jitsu, maintain your mental sharpness. There are some studies that are talking about visualization, which is what we're going to talk about next. Visualization is another way to help maintain your mental acuity for the sport. Why? Muscle memory, right? That's one of the big things we're training when we're doing jiu-jitsu, when we're drilling, is we're trying to build muscle memory so we can hit off those techniques more quickly. We don't even have to think about it. We know, we go, right? But muscle memory happens in the brain, not in the muscles. Muscle memory is entirely a function of the brain. So being in class and watching helps us maintain that muscle memory because we're watching. Vivid visualization also helps us maintain that muscle memory. Why? There have been studies that have shown under fMRI scans that when people intensely and vividly visualize an activity, those same areas of the brain light up as if they were actually doing the activity. Now, why is this important? This is something called neuroplasticity, which is going to be a future episode that we're going to do here. It lights up the same areas of the brain, and our brain is able to physically, essentially rewire itself. It's able to build new connections, strengthen connections, trim out the ineffective and inefficient ones. There are physical changes to the connections and neurons in the brain. So just visualizing it is going to help maintain that muscle memory and your memory of all the techniques and all of that. So engage in visualization. Now, vivid visualization means you're engaging as many senses as you can. You're being as detailed as possible. It's almost like meditating, but it's nothing as mystical as that. But that's another way for us to maintain our mental health and our connection to the game, right? How else can we help maintain our mental health during this process? You should journal your progress. Write down how you're feeling, how your recovery is going on a day-to-day basis. Why? Why does this help? 1, recovery is not a linear process, and there are going to be days where you're not feeling as good as you did a few days prior. Now, you would think, I get injured and I start recovering and I get better and better and better and better and better, and then eventually I'm just healed. But it doesn't work that way. There are days where you're going to feel better, and there's days where you're going to feel like you're taking a step or two back. But if you're journaling your progress, you can look back at where you were a month ago or 2 months ago, and you're going to be able to see the progress that you've made. And even though you're having a down day or a couple of days right now, recovery-wise, you're physically not feeling as good as you did 3 days ago or last week, but you look at where you were a month ago and you're going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm still ahead of the game there. So that right there can be a way to bolster your mental health and not feel as frustrated about the process. We also know that putting negative thoughts down on paper helps our brains process them because it's basically putting them out into the real world and allowing us to detach from them, I guess is one way to look at it, be more objective with how we're looking at these negative thoughts and feelings. And by putting them down and getting them out, recognizing them for what they are, dealing with them if we have to deal with them, or just putting them away. Just saying, okay, I had this negative thought. I've recognized it for what it is, and now I'm just going to get rid of it because I don't need it anymore. By doing that, that absolutely improves mental health, because if you don't do something with that, something positive and constructive with it, those negative thoughts can start spiraling and turn into ruminations, and that can further our anxiety and turn into depression, and we don't want to be there. So, write them down. It works. It works. How else can we do this? How else can we do this recovery thing? Deal with our mental health during the recovery process. Talk with someone about how we're feeling. It kind of goes to that journaling thing, but now we're going to be actually talking with someone else who can give us some feedback. This might be a friend. You have a friend or someone you feel comfortable talking with just about how you're feeling. That can be very positive. That worked really well for me. The first time I had ever been laid off from a job, many, many years ago, I was super depressed about it. It was not a good thing to go through. And I was keeping it all to myself because I was a little embarrassed by the whole thing. And then eventually, about 3 months into this layoff of still not being able to find work, I ended up talking with some former colleagues from this job I had been laid off from, that we were friends. And he was talking about how he had been laid off and how he was going through. And by talking about it with him, I started to feel a lot better about myself in this situation. It absolutely helped. So talking with friends, family can absolutely be a good thing. However, maybe that's not enough. Maybe it's not enough. They don't necessarily have the tools and the know-how to help get you out of the hole that you're finding yourself in. This is where talking with a professional therapist can be very, very helpful. Why? We're doing the same thing. We're chatting with someone. We're getting those thoughts out there, but we're talking with someone who now has the tools and training to help us figure out what to do with all of this. They're the ones that know, that can teach us how to affix ropes or build a ladder to get out of this hole that we find ourselves in. Listen, this is a really good thing to do. When I was recovering from this surgery, I was really, despite doing all of this other stuff, I was still finding myself very depressed about not being able to do jiu-jitsu, just feeling disassociated from myself, just feeling really down and out. So I started talking to a therapist, and it absolutely helped. It absolutely helped. There is nothing wrong with talking to someone. It is not a sign of weakness. It is absolutely a sign of strength. It is an absolute sign of strength in any situation whatsoever to recognize when you don't have the tools or the knowledge to solve a problem. If you don't know how to fix the plumbing in your house, you have a leak and you don't know how to fix it properly, there is nothing wrong with calling a plumber, someone who has been trained to fix the problem. If you have a problem with the wiring in your house and you don't know how to fix it, there is nothing wrong with calling an electrician. Think about that. Anytime something in your life is broken, there is almost no stigma attached to calling someone when you don't know what to do. You recognize you don't have the ability or the tools to get the job done. Maybe you do know how to fix the problem in your house. But, so I know that my retention wall is falling down because there's no drainage behind it, and I need to dig out that whole area behind the wall and fill it with drainage stone and all of that. I know how to fix this problem. However, I don't have the proper tool. I don't have an auger that's going to allow me to easily dig through, or a trench digger, or whatever the tool would be, a backhoe. I don't have that tool that will let me easily get back there to put that stone down and put the drainage in that's needed. So I might need to call someone because they do have that tool. That's essentially what it is to talk to a therapist. That's essentially what it is to talk to a psychiatrist. Maybe medication is needed. That is completely up to you, your doctor, and what you want to do. But I only say this because this is something I'm very passionate about, is destigmatizing mental health and mental health issues. I am on antidepressants. I take ADHD meds, and absolutely I feel like I function much better with those things. It doesn't mean it solves all my problems, but it helped give me tools to better solve the problems that I have. Anyways, talking with a therapist helped me get through with that. I still talk to a therapist. I find it very useful. So add that to your toolbox is what I'm saying here. And if anyone has an issue or makes fun of you for talking to a therapist, like legit, have them come talk to me and I'll talk to them. Because it's just unacceptable. Look, one more example on this, just because I'm just feeling compelled. So my coach is a retired U.S. Marine Corps staff sergeant. He did 2 or 3 tours of duty in Iraq, and great guy, tough guy. Absolutely, by his own admission, suffering from PTSD. And he just sort of lived with it for years, tried to deal with it on his own, and finally got to a breaking point. And he had the courage to say, I need help. I need a lot of help. And he actually checked himself into the VA for about a week, which he absolutely needed, and started talking to a therapist. And then he told people about it. He told us we had to help, run the school for about a week or two while he was dealing with all this. And then he went and talked to the students about what had happened, because he just kind of disappeared. And then he realized, wow, there's a lot of rumors about this. And he realized this is not healthy for me just to disappear and not talk about this. That's what got him there in the first place. So he was very open about him needing help and going to the hospital and all that. And that was a few years ago, and he's doing much, much better now. He's gone, yes, much better place mentally. So if a retired Marine with tours of combat duty in Iraq can talk about how good it is to go to therapy and get help, you can do it too. Anyway, moving on. The final thing that I really want to bring up here with injury recovery is you need to be patient. That is honestly the biggest thing here, because so much of this process is completely beyond our control. Yes, we can absolutely get enough sleep. That should honestly be the first thing I said, and I don't know why I didn't say it. But you should be getting enough sleep. You should be absolutely paying attention to your nutrition. You should absolutely be engaging in physical therapy when you've been cleared to do so by your doctor. You should do all of those things. Those things will help. They certainly won't hurt. But overall, you need to be patient, because most of this is completely out of our control. Remember, recovery is not a linear process. It will mostly be, when you look at the trend, it will be an upward trend of improvement. But there's going to be dips along the way. It's going to look like the stock market. The stock market, while has trended up, almost always, it has had dips, obviously had some big dips. It has daily dips. It doesn't mean that the stock market crashes every day and that the economy is fundamentally unsound. It just means that there's fluctuations on a day-to-day basis. Recovery is the same thing. So, along this process, even if you lose some strength, and you will, and even though your cardio might erode, it will. Remember that depending on how long you trained beforehand, if you were in really good shape, you're training on a regular basis before the injury, you will very likely be back to previous levels at around 6 to 8 weeks after returning to full activity, regardless of how much time you took off. There have been studies that have been done for trained individuals who had a solid base of strength of resistance training. And then they've taken anywhere from 2 weeks to, I think the outside was like 8 months off from strength training, where they really weren't doing much of anything to maintain that strength. Then they go back into the gym after that hiatus. No matter how much time they took off, the maximum amount of time, on average, it took for people to return to their previous levels of weight training, meaning they were back up to that working set of whatever it was before. If they were deadlifting 350 for reps, they took a bunch of time off. They were back up to that deadlifting 350 for reps at most at 8 weeks. The body does a really good job of remembering where it was. So be patient with that. All right? You're going to be able to regain what you lost. It's not going to take you years. It's going to take you weeks, maybe a couple of months. Now, there might be possible adjustments depending on the injury that we had. It just might be that because of that injury, how it healed, where the injury was, what the injury was, we might not be able to get to full strength because of that injury. And that's just the reality of it. But we might be able to adapt and find other ways of exercising, other ways of rolling, Maybe we're not as flexible as we once were. There's a lot of factors in here. So we do need to have a certain degree of acceptance that depending on the injury, how old we were. The younger you are, the more likely it is you're going to bounce back, whereas the older we are, the less likely it is we're going to bounce back 100%. But as long as we're being accepting of those limitations, we're going to be able to regain most, if not all, of what we lost during that hiatus. The other thing we need to accept along this path of being patient with the process is we need to accept the reality of where we are now and not fixate on where we used to be, especially when those two states cannot be reconciled. Where we are right now is the reality. And if that reality means that we can't run as fast or bench as much, or maybe we're not as flexible in one knee as we used to be, we can't move a certain way, maybe it's just that it's taking us longer to bounce back than it did when we got injured 10 years ago, whatever the case is, we have to accept where we are right now. If we don't, that is absolutely going to lead to depression, going back to the mental health thing. If we're always comparing where we are to where we used to be, that is not a good place to be when we're pining for what used to be. Now, if we're doing it and say, hey, look at where I am now, I'm kind of happy, look at where I was, look how far I've come, that's a positive outlook. But we have to accept where we are right now. I am 47 right now. I have to accept that. I do not bounce back from injury the way I did when I was 23. It just doesn't happen. The body physically doesn't work that way. I have to accept that. And I have to accept where I am in my recovery process. I am nowhere near, I don't want to say nowhere near, I am not where I was this time last year when I didn't know it yet, but I was going to be competing at Fury Grappling 12 in December of 2023, or 24, December 2024. Yeah. I didn't know I was going to be doing that, but I was in really, really good shape. I'm not there right now, but I can't compare myself to where I am now to where I was in, as of this recording, October of 2024. It's an unfair comparison. I had a major injury along the way. So practicing some radical acceptance is going to be very helpful in the overall process. So, as I've said throughout all this is a patient process. Does that make sense? This is a process that requires patience. There are things that we can do that definitely will not hurt and looks like they might be able to help us speed the process along. Again, we don't know if it actually will for each individual. We can only look at all of the data, the aggregate data of injuries of whatever kind you've suffered and of the average recovery times. And again, we'll never know. There's no way to do a controlled study on this, but engaging in good sleep, good nutrition, and proper strength training and positive mental health can definitely not hurt and may reduce your injury time. It's one of those things that if you do those things and nothing changes, well, great, you've lost nothing. You didn't injure yourself more, so you're fine. But if it does work, great, you're healing that much faster. So it's one of those no-lose propositions to engage in those things. That's about it. That's what I have for injury recovery. I'm hoping in the future to actually have an interview with the surgeon who did my repair, because he's a really smart guy and he's got engaging in some new treatments, some cutting edge treatments that are showing promise. Hopefully we'll see more with that, but I'm hoping to interview him soon. At any rate, if you have any questions about injury recovery, you think I missed something, I got something wrong, go ahead, hit me up in the comments, hit me up on Instagram at StBrianBJJ. If you liked this episode, please, again, thank you for listening, but subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, that's also StBrianBJJ. Follow me on Instagram, StBrianBJJ. Thank you so much. Like, share, subscribe, all of that. Feed the algorithm so I can keep making these things for you. A million thanks. I really appreciate it. Please let me know if there's a topic you would like me to cover. But in the meantime, I hope this has helped. Stay safe, be cool to each other,